Today we're going to talk about using media to connect across cultures. I'd like to start by thanking Ogilvy for the interesting and groundbreaking research and for giving us this opportunity to convene and to discuss this interesting topic. First, I'm going to start with introducing my panelists. My name is Cheryl Hilliard-Tucker, and I will introduce the panelists, and they each will, after I introduce the whole group, give a short presentation for them to introduce themselves. And then I will open with some questions for our panelists based on some of the topics that we've discussed today and what's in the research. And then we will open it up for questions from the audience. And so I'm going to ask you to hold on until I ask for the questions for the audience. Okay, to my immediate left is Michelle Thornton. She is Senior Director of Multicultural Ad Sales for CNN. Roberto Ruiz, VP of Brand Solution Univision. Len Burnett, co-CEO and group publisher of Uptown Media Group and Vibe Lifestyle Network. And Mark Eldekin, CEO of the Gay Ad Network. So we're going to start today's conversation with Michelle.
You know, we've all used big words. This is a family, right? Okay, yeah. So I'll keep it real. So we've used a lot of big words, but at the end of the day, this is about revenue. It's about me generating revenue for CNN, and it's about us generating revenue for our clients. And so in 2008, myself and Jeffrey Bowen, this is Destiny, I don't know where he is, but we started a business unit called CNN Advantage, and we did that because we wanted to connect our advertisers who wanted to reach consumers that look different. We wanted to do that in very relevant ways, and so we created some content that allowed them to talk to these folks in ways that we thought were honest and reflective of who they are. And the 2008 election showed us, you know, what we're calling the new mainstream, right? Barack Obama was running, and people flocked to CNN to see this election unfold. And when I look at this picture, this is the new general market. And these are the people that come to CNN. Now, Anderson Cooper will tell a story that doesn't look like him, and you don't have to be of it to tell the story, right? So you don't. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that we allowed our advertiser to not only buy CNN, Anderson Cooper, but buy Soledad's Black in America. And I think I sit here today because you can do both of those things, and maybe one agency can have that conversation in a very smart, strategic way. At the end of the day, and I'm going to show you just really quickly because I have 2 minutes, Black in America did a couple things. You know, we always talk about reach and talk, but at the end of the day, Lowe's and British Airways and Coca-Cola, they don't want to just do that. They want to touch them. And you have to do that in a very smart way. And you do that through maybe content like Black in America, or maybe you do that through content on ESPN, Black History Month, or maybe you do that through Univision in certain ways. But you can do that because you do it through mobile, you do it through television, you do it through radio, you do it through your iPad now, but you do it, right? And the conversation today, and I hope we get into it, it's about doing that through different mediums. You can have a general market network that has a multicultural conversation. And so what I hope that we do today is we have that conversation. And I hope that everyone is open enough and strategic enough to do that. So these are just some of the slides I'm going to go through quickly, that we did that through this one medium that Soledad O'Brien and her unit in America has been committed to.
It's my time?
Yes.
I want to, first of all, thank Ogilvy for the opportunity of being here, and also commend them on this conference. I'm very impressed. I was incredibly impressed by Miles' comments earlier this morning about not being a language conversation, but being a culture conversation. And even the name Ogilvy Culture is so appropriate for what we're talking about, of not oversimplifying things, but looking deeply into insights and connecting through culture rather than just thinking it's all about language. I just have one slide, if you can go to that. Just to talk about, I imagine that most of you know what Univision is, if you have a pulse. If you don't, I'm really sorry. No. after the numbers that we saw on the size of the Hispanic population and the power of the Hispanic consumer to generate growth. So what we have done at Univision is created this client development group, and the client development group is a consulting team. We see out there that there is a lot of clients and agencies that know, that understand that they should be doing something in the Hispanic space. So why should I be doing it? Size, power, but they struggle with the how should I do this? So that's what we do. We have a team of over 50 people, 50 professionals that consult on everything from strategy to research and consumer insights, creative marketing services, and measurement. This is not to say that any of you, account directors at Ogilvy or brand team members at clients cannot do this. Of course you can. But what we're here is to facilitate, to speed the learning curve, to make it easier for you and to bring expertise from a variety of clients. Things like competitive benchmarking, which is fascinating for clients to understand what some other brands are doing in the category, to marketing best practices. We do a lot of proprietary research, ethnographies. We just concluded a research on male grooming, for example. We're doing something on telecom. We're always doing different pieces of research. So we're out here as a resource to marketers to harness the power of this consumer.
Great. Thanks. Good afternoon, or is it still morning? Late morning?
It's still in the morning.
Still late morning. Still late morning. Thanks for having me. Look, what's interesting, and first thanks Jeffrey for inviting me and the Ogilvy team. What's interesting is it's my third tour of duty at Vibe. Vibe is celebrating its 18th year anniversary in September, and I distinctly remember 18 years ago when I was part of the team that launched it, is having this conversation to advertisers about the fact that there's a generation coming that believes in multiculturalism, looks through the prism of life differently than the generation before them. They really absorb and really appreciate not only the African-American aesthetic, but the cultures of everybody, and you have to participate. And I remember looking at clients, and it was like deers in the headlight. It was just, they couldn't see it coming. And the numbers were there. The numbers were there even then, specifically looking at music, when you looked at the Billboard charts, that the top 10, top 8 songs week after week were hip hop or R&B songs. And we weren't all getting measured because we knew that the black kids were going out and buying the tapes off the street. They weren't buying them in the store all the time. And this meant that young white males and females were buying these songs, and so they appreciated this culture. And there were clients at the time that over and over again said, hey, our product is not for them. I don't believe this audience has the money to buy the product. And many of those businesses today are down, primarily because not only the economy is down, because they haven't invested in this market. And I think what today, we're talking about, what's coming about in these conversations is, hopefully opening the minds even more. Again, we've been talking about this for 18 years. So it's not new for many of us in this room that day to day have to go out and sell to clients and agencies. But as Tim said earlier, and Tanya said earlier, I think, look, you have no choice now. I mean, it is right here in front of you. And we either address it now or you're going to get left behind. And what's exciting about this time even is certainly we're in a bad and tough economic time, specifically as it pertains to African Americans or young adult urban kids. These are the guys who are still spending money. Right, wrong, or indifferent. We won't talk about the social aspects of it. But if you have a product that you're not marketing to this audience right now, you're going to get left behind. And so if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's what becomes the most frustrating. When you go back to clients or agencies and they say, well, we're going to stick to the plan we had last year. Well, the plan you had last year, you're down 10%. Why would you do the same thing again? Do something different, please. So, but I think these are exciting times. I think for a lot of clients, it's a little bit frightening because it's new, it's different, you're in tough times, and oftentimes, you're looking to try to get that next promotion, and the idea of doing something different, right now may not be the thing on the top of your mind, but you have to do it. Because if you don't do it, you're going to get left behind. And So what we've done at Vibe now with the sort of resurgence of it, we relaunched it about a year and a half ago. We have a lifestyle network that really focuses on the digital aspect of the business. Uptown is a magazine that we launched 8 years ago, believe it or not, and really addresses, again, we're not just a monolithic group. We are, there's categories within categories, and there's an affluent African-American market that's not being addressed from a lifestyle perspective, and that's what Vibe does, or excuse me, Uptown does. But the reality is, you have urban brands, and brands that are targeting both African-American women, brands that are general market brands that have a large African-American audience, gay, Latino brands. You've got to invest in those. If you don't, you're missing the boat, and you're going to get left behind.
Okay. My name is Mark Elderkin, and I've been invited here to answer your questions about the LGBT market, which, if you don't know, that stands for lesbian, gay, bi, and transgender community. I just tend to refer to it as, in general, it's referred to as the gay market. And I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time in gay media and the gay market just because of the convergence that's taking place. If you look at the acceptance of the gay community in our society, just the recent changes like here in New York, don't ask, don't tell policy changes, corporate acceptance. We heard earlier today about the diversity policies at Ogilvy. Corporations all over the world are now becoming more inclusive. They have diversity groups within their organizations. They have anti-discrimination policies. They're supporting domestic partner insurance, and doing things within the organization to make them supportive and embracing the gay community in ways that really haven't been done before. If you look back, 2002, there were 13 organizations, 13 corporations that had a stamp of approval by the Human Rights Campaign that tracks how organizations are supporting their gay employees and the gay community in general. And today there are over 300 that have received 100% stamp of approval. In just the last 10 years, it's been dramatic. At the same time, we're seeing this, the digital media and what's happening in your ability as advertisers to reach out to the gay community. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was limited. You could advertise in a magazine, gay magazine, and maybe reach 100,000 readers. That was the sort of like the largest outlet. It was impossible. Companies like American Airlines, Absolute Vodka, Subaru, Bud, Anheuser-Busch, there are a few that 30 years ago used events and used supportive nonprofit groups to try to get into the market. But we're seeing today, just because of the ability to reach millions of gay people in a day rather than over 10 years, is making it a very dynamic market and presents a lot of opportunities for advertisers that are interested in this market and see the opportunity. And so what my company does is Gay Ad Network. We aggregate the community and through different digital means, through mobile, through the internet, so that you can reach the gay market very effectively and very selectively in how you're doing your targeting. So thank you for having me here today.
Okay, well, thank you for those introductions. There's an interesting term that everyone's using. We've learned a lot of new terms this morning, but a lot of people are talking about the new mainstream. So the new mainstream is defined, though, in different ways by different people. So I thought we'd start off talking about how do you see this new mainstream? What's your definition from your vantage point? So, want to start?
I mean, I could do it quickly. I was on a flight and I saw a little young African-American guy and he had a skateboard on. I mean, you can't define people by what they look like anymore because you're going to see people doing different things. So the next iteration of this conversation is, yes, I'm an African-American woman, but I like to go to Ireland. I don't, by the way. I haven't been there, but no, nothing against it. I just like to stay kind of close to home. Anyway, but it's beyond that. It's beyond that I'm a mom. It's beyond that I love shoes. It's beyond. So you have to get into, exactly. Look, if nothing else worked, at least you guys would think I had cute shoes. I mean, that's how I roll. So you guys get what I'm saying. It's behavior, but it's deeper than that. I have a daughter who's brown, but she does ukulele at school. I'm like, what is going on? So as advertisers and as networks, we have to now create content that talks to that. We have to have targeted messaging that aligns with that and talk to this next generation of folks. Brown will never go away. It's not going to, but it's just the surface.
Yeah, I think two things. The new mainstream is really great. And the challenge is that it's very comfortable for marketers and business people that we are to try to find, buckets of people in this bucket or that, when in reality the new mainstream is very great. And I think the new mainstream is people's iPods. If you look at an iPod and you look at the playlist of any Latino kid right now, it's going to have Juan Luis Guerra or Luis Miguel or Mark Anthony, and then it's going to have the Black Eyed Peas. So we are living in this duality, this cultural duality. And marketers have to get comfortable with the duality as opposed to try to go one side or the other. I mean, the world, it would be great if the world was black and white like Fox News wants to see it, but it's really gray. And,
like that. Keep talking about
okay.
it.
I have to do something for my CNN colleague here. As such, that's why culture and passion points are so important, because if I'm a soccer fanatic, I'm going to be looking for that specific content, and wherever that content is where I'm going to go. And if I'm a Latin music fanatic, I'm going to go for the Latin Grammys, for example, wherever that property is located. So that's what really is just driving audiences and driving engagement at this point.
I think that the new mainstream is really, not defined obviously by race. It is really defined by this generation of kids looks at the prism of life totally different than the generation before them. And so the passion points are really centered around the idea of whatever's important to them. So whether it's skateboarding or music, beauty, fashion, you have to attach yourself with brands that really address what those passion points are. What's interesting now, I think, that's coming down the pike is that really we've gone from a push medium of media now towards pull. And so for years we just gave you, what we wanted to give you. And now, to not only the kids, but even us as adults, we want to absorb it when we want to absorb it. So you can't put us in a box and say, well, hey, black men, 18 to 34 are going to do this at this time, so we're going to give that there. White women are just going to do this here. So now you really have to address and find out what the pure passion points are, and understand that, again, I used to say, what used to be interesting back when we launched Vibe, I would say that, these kids look through the prism of life where they really embrace the African-American aesthetic. And I think to a large degree that's still true amongst young adults, but I think now it's bigger than that. It's a greater appreciation of everybody's culture. Yeah, that's what's so different, and that's where marketers get really jacked up, because they just want to put you in a box, and that's not the way it works for us anymore. And so it's the appreciation of that culture, the true browning of America, and the fact that everybody appreciates each other's culture. You can peer into each other's cultures through social media and digital opportunities. That it really, that's now what's changed what we see, what used to be the old mainstream, and really, today's new generation is the new general market.
And it also transcends sexual orientation, so it's not sort of gay or straight anymore. If you look at what's happening in the media today, you look, these kids are like, I'm born this way, right? They're Gaga fans, and they're going to be who they are. And so it presents a challenge for a marketer to try to figure out who these consumers are, especially the younger ones, and how to reach them effectively. And as was mentioned here, the new techniques through digital media are going to make all the difference, so that the efficiency in the buys can be optimized based on the performance of the campaigns that you're running. And we're seeing more and more advertisers, when they're identifying the gay market and coming into and kind of identifying that as part of their mainstream budget now, and providing kind of allocations and special creative for this kind of segment of their mainstream. They're getting smarter and smarter in the use of technology to track it all, so that they don't have to extend their budgets to reach kind of this more diverse community, but get smarter with how they're spending their money by leveraging technology. I think this afternoon we're going to hear more about that.
A lot of the conversation about cross-cultural marketing, I suppose multicultural marketing, and looking at the mainstream sometimes looks at target markets in the past. And I think one of the things that we learned at Time Warner during my time there was that if you are not including a cross-cultural message, it's not only not going to turn off the target markets, but it will turn off the mainstream white American market who is looking, especially for the younger ones, for messaging and information content, music, whatever, that reflects the global society that they are growing up into. So if you looked at that kind of thing and you see some of the things that you see advertisers are doing that might not be addressing this cross-cultural opportunities, is there anything that you see your advertisers or advertisers in general doing that they're kind of missing this message? You want to start? How about if I start with you?
There's only an hour, right?
Exactly. Don't go there. You see how?
Yeah, I'll go back to Miles this morning. He said, culture should be embedded up front versus at the end of the line. And there's not that many advertisers that are embedding the culture up front. I mean, there's still, we see in the Hispanic market, there's still the intern doing the Hispanic marketing after 5 o'clock. Not even the full-time intern. That one's doing the social media, because that's in vogue. But in reality, yeah, we do. But we also see marketers like McDonald's and Kraft and Unilever leading with consumer insights and leading with thinking about. If my target is moms, 22% with moms, kids 2 to 11 are Hispanic. So what am I going to do about these moms? What are the insights that I'm going to apply? How am I going to reach them? If I'm doing research, am I including an over quota of these moms in my research plan? So there are marketers that are doing the right thing, but there's ample opportunity. And that's why there's 50 of us at this group, going out, working with agencies like Ogilvy and other partners to change this. And wherever we change it, we see positive, return. We see brands growing. Kraft went out last year with Kraft Singles, and there was a great article on Ad Age about how, they saw double-digit growth after, they looked at the consumer, they looked at the insights, and delivered on that.
A couple things, and I'll try to be quick and not get too upset. One is, and we're just talking about things that are being done wrong that can be changed. Far too often, numbers don't lie, more or less, right? And so we'll go into a meeting, and the clients will tell you that, hey, the African-American market over-indexes in this area. They are number one consumer. They're doing this, they're doing that, and then the budget doesn't reflect that. And the excuse will be is, we got them. Right? So we don't need to continue to market there because we don't need to invest because we weren't even investing there before and we got great numbers. So let's not rock the boat and screw it up by talking to them now because that may change the numbers. And so if you're a good marketer, you should be able to invest in that and grow it more. And then so that's one conversation. The other one is, hey, we're down to the bottom of the barrel here for budget, and it's the African American market or the Latino market. And we're going to choose one. Now, both of these markets are the growth markets, and we're just going to choose one or the other. And this year, the Latino market's being chosen. And they'll ride that for a couple years, and they'll say, okay, this year we're back to African American because our numbers went off a little bit because we weren't, so we're back there. And then they go back and forth. And the reality is what we were talking about earlier and what the whole discussion is about today is this is the new general market. Reshift your dollars. If it's nothing else, to look at it in a holistic perspective. We used to want you to focus on, give us the diversity market, give us the minority budget, or whatever you want to call it today. Look at it and start from a white sheet. Look at your brand, look at the audience, and then really say, how am I going to grow my brand? I'm going to sell more product, and who I'm going to sell it to, and who's got the money, who's spending the money, who's growing, and then it'll sort of all fall out naturally how it should be. And so those are things that a lot of clients are doing wrong. And there's quite a few that are getting it right. But when you go into a meeting and the client says that my super consumer is a young adult male, African-American male, 18 to 34, they love music, that's our super consumer. This is for a fast food company. And then they tell you they're investing in NASCAR. That's a problem.
Can I just add something on the back end of that? I love how companies recruit diverse employees, and then you come in, they're like, be like everybody else because you got to fit in, you got to work politics, you got to do this. So my thing is, on the back of what everyone's going to say. Don't hire Ogilvy culture and make them conform. Let them be who they're supposed to. Let them bring you something different so that you can be different, right? Okay, I'm done preaching. I'm sorry, I just had to say it. I had to say it.
I'd like to, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
let me ask
in addition
you.
to what we just heard, there's, what we hear a lot is, well, we're reaching gay people in our general market campaigns already. So we don't need to spend any more in that market. And, you know, that's sort of a challenge. And that's you know, we have so many case studies where we can show and prove and demonstrate the return when you're actually in, you know, advertise with the right message in the right media where you're targeting the consumer that you're trying to bring in. With the right message, it's going to resonate for them. You're going to have, you know, so much more success. And so that's probably the biggest mistake that we see being made. And the other is turning to like the token gay person that's like the receptionist to get, and they're the expert that's going to help come up with, you know, their new strategy.
Right.
And that doesn't work either.
I can't believe there are so many similarities.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we hear we're reaching them in English, and you know, when you look at the Nielsen numbers, you can see that on any given night, for example, a Univision telenovela is reaching about 33% more bilingual Hispanics, only counting the bilinguals than American Idol, for example. So, I mean, the power, and it's not about Spanish language, it's about the power of the content being very relevant to what people want to watch. But we hear that a lot, and we have the challenge of the budgets too, you know, the bottom of the barrel budget. But that's changing, and it's changing because clients are seeing the profits and the rewards.
I have a question, though, about the telenovelas. When are they going to be in English? Because I'm tired of looking at them trying to figure out the body language of what's going on.
Well, actually, a lot of our telenovelas have secondary audio programs, SAP. So if you turn in your SAP, you can see subtitles. and Ugly Betty was a huge success in general market, and that was sort of the telenovela genre translated to English language. But what you have to do is learn Spanish.
That's probably the best answer.
Because I know the guys are watching because of the, you know, talent.
That's not quite what my husband said when he's watching, but this is an interesting conversation because I think, you know, in terms of what some of you have talked about, I think I was guilty. I moderated a panel for Time Warner down at ANA in November, looking at our one message idea, many voices, one destination, in the sense that yes, a lot of the markets that we want to target, the fastest growing, as we learned earlier today, are also audiences and over-indexing in some of the general market media. So if they are over-indexing in general market media, and I can buy a Time Warner buy that may go across platforms, do I still need to do ethnic marketing or target marketing? And do I need to do it in the media? What's the advantage?
And actually, I'll take that one. I mean, we saw research from IAG that clearly points to the value of commercials that are in language and in culture, and the recall and the likability of the spots is off the charts compared to what bilingual consumers are watching in English language. So there's an element of this language of the heart that just adds value, and consumers are very emotional, and it resonates much more when it's in language and in a content that it's culturally relevant. So you sort of get a double advantage.
So,
in gay media, we've seen the same thing. There are numerous reports that show that, not in language, but within gay media, a message that's you know, a gay relevant message has the largest impact in shifting you know, brand acceptability, likelihood to buy. The you know, instant conversions, like for an airline that's trying to book a ticket or an insurance company trying to get a new policy, it may not happen directly within the gay media because consumers aren't going into gay media to necessarily, you know, buy something, but they're going to remember it. It's going to be that post-impression impact that media has that's going to have the biggest impact.
You know, oftentimes, certainly, you'll see where African Americans are indexing or over-indexing in particular general market areas, and certainly that's a good thing. I mean, we hear it, but are we absorbing that message? Are we really connecting with that message? And so it's very important. We're not saying, hey, don't ever put an ad in Vanity Fair, GQ, or whatever again. We're saying, hey, be there, but you can't ignore, Essence and Ebony and Black Enterprise vibe. You can't ignore them. You can't ignore the gay and Latin areas as well. So you have to really, to connect all the dots. So connect all the, and I'll speak for the magazine folks too. It's like, not only does it just mean connect the dots in your general market area where we may over-index, but connect the dots not only in broadcast, in radio, in events, in print, in digital. That's, when you look at the numbers, I think Time Inc. Did a great study, is that the consumers where there's the most growth in a brand or saw where products were sold, where they did a 360 approach to their message. So it's not all just in digital. It's not all just in broadcast. And yes, print is not dying. And so you have to participate in all of that to really get your message across.
I love how we sit here and talk like we're not consumers. I'm the best focus group I have because I ask myself stuff all the time. I want to see myself someplace. So let me just ask a question. Who does not want to see a reflection of themselves when they turn on the TV, when they open a magazine, when they look online, when they, right? We all want to see ourselves. We're moms or we're dads or we're, whatever the case is. And not only when we see it, what do? Wow, they respect me. I'm going to send this on to my friend. I'm going to send this on to my mom group. I'm going to send whatever. And then we send that message on. That is how you create brand loyalty. So yes, speak to me, respect me. I'm a person, I'm brown, I'm a mom, whatever that case is, do that. And then guess what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to make sure that everybody I know buys your product. And we just have to keep it real sometimes. It's simple. Just ask yourself, like, do I want to do that? And we get so caught up in the business that we talk about them and we talk about that brand, but it's really us, right?
Actually, it's on the booklet that you guys are going to get in the conference when you guys at Ogilvy Culture talk about the cultural capital. I mean, the cultural capital is what you're doing when you're launching you're attaching your brand to either his brand or the Univision brand, or not even this brands, but to the content or a star or a specific passion point again. So it's a unique opportunity to use this element as cultural capital.
We, when you're looking at cultural capital, give me a second with it. We also have an issue of cultural stereotyping sometimes. And I know during my time when I was at Black Enterprise, we would get ads that were stereotypic and different in the same brands that they were doing other places. And we would have to say, no, I don't think that that's going to work for our audience. I spent some time recently at Essence and also realized that we had rejected some ads where they're still stereotyping black women in a way that was offensive. I was completely surprised, being that there was a 15-year difference between my time at BE and my time, just a few months ago at Essence. So what are we seeing here about this stereotyping? Where do you see this, the people trying to be authentic but wind up to be offensive? Is it still something that you're dealing with? Is there some guidelines?
Look, it still happens at times, and I think we got to be careful too, because sometimes we get a little overly sensitive to at times. There's and then oftentimes, unfortunately, some of the stereotypical ads come from the African-American agencies at times. So, and I love all of y'all. All of them give me a lot of business, but that happens sometimes. That whether for African-Americans, it's always about music and we're dancing, and that sometimes, So, but sometimes it comes from that space. But I think. Look, the reality is, as a client and as an agency, what you have to do is make sure you have people at the table that you will allow to say something and to, take their, advice, because stuff will slide out the door, and there was a brother or sister sitting at the table, and they knew it wasn't cool, but they weren't in an environment where speaking up and raising your hand where everybody else was nodding. It's like, that's hot. And you can say like, no, it's sort of, not nice, And most agencies, and obviously it seems like Ogilvy's not one of them, aren't set up like that, And then look, into the defense of the African-American agencies, again, going back to what you're saying, like the client wants you to do what they see, So sometimes the path of least resistance is give them that, look, they're writing the check, that's what they want to see. I'm tired of fighting that battle. Let that one slide out the door, and then here's the other thing. And then as consumers, you know, when we see something, we don't say anything. We're the worst. You know, we're the best consumer of that, but something will happen, it's offensive, and it didn't make sense, and we don't say a word. We don't say not one word. And quickly, years ago, a communication client did something, and this is a good almost 15 years ago. You know, it was, and it was a Uniworld client. I got a call. I was doing little urban profile, so it might have been 20 years ago. And the client said, "Hey, there's this bad ad that came out on TV. We're looking to place some ad. Can we still make the closing date for your magazine?" And our magazine was always open until actually went to the press. So yes, we make the date. So here's what happened, and we're just waiting to hear back from the client for the budget. And called back the next day. There's not going to be any creative. We're not going to do the ad because no one called. No one cared. And so if you don't care as a consumer, gay, black, Latino, women, you know, Asian, the client's not going to care. So you got to speak up.
Mark, do you see anything that is different?
Well, we see offensive ads all the time, but they're usually kind of stereotypical ads that aren't running in gay media, they're running in general media and just making fun of gay people. That happens all the time. And there's GLAAD, which is a group that kind of is a watchdog, and you know the community does speak up and does try to prevent that in mainstream media. What we usually see is kind of the opposite in gay media. It's where it's general market creative that comes in that's just not going to work. You know, it's as extreme as, you know, a retailer running a Valentine ad with, you know, a man and a woman in it, and targeting it in gay media, knowing where it was going. You know? So we usually have a different type of problem.
Let me just say that I think this is now our opportunity to make sure that our staffs look like the face of America. A lot of times we have folks putting together our content and our advertising, and they don't know anything about it. Look, it's on the content side, it's on the agency side. So this is our opportunity to make sure that we do all the things we can do so that we have an organic voice when we're talking to consumers and trying to get them to spend money on our products.
Yeah, some of the issues that were mentioned are very, very similar in the Hispanic market, but I think stereotypes is what happens when you don't do your homework. If you do your homework, and it doesn't mean that you have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, but just look at what are the insights and what is it that it's been communicated. If you do your homework, you're going to come up with good solid insights. And sometimes they don't have to be necessarily uniquely Hispanic. It could be universal insights explained in a different way, in a relevant manner. It could be about the execution. But we see the same thing. I mean, every single commercial doesn't have to be about soccer. There are other sports.
Right. And I think the clients, the agencies should be working more closely with the media companies to provide that feedback loop, because we've seen every type of creative, every type of execution within our particular segments. And I think, you know, the media companies are going to know instantly if it's going to work in a lot of cases. So I think the agencies involving the media companies, not just as the distributor of the ads, but as a partner in the, you know, creative process as well.
And I think this time is so uniquely ripe for this because we are all learning from the 2010 census, and this effort will be evolving very quickly over the next few months as the information starts coming in. It's already, as a very well-known demographer is saying, it's surprising, and it's not. And I know I've heard the chief of the Census Bureau come and speak, and he was saying there's a lot of surprises going on, and we just are at the tip of the iceberg. You had a question.
So I'm hearing there's over the course of thanks. Over the course of the is this working? Yeah. Okay. Over the course of the morning, I've noticed sort of a tension between. We want to be consistently talking, not saying, okay, now we're focusing on the African American market, now we're focusing on the Latino market. We want to make sure that we have culturally relevant touch points in our content in a culturally relevant channel. So it's all very dedicated and very persistent across all the different cultures. Versus the last panel we heard, you know, there's a mixing of races and cultures, and people, biracial is not even indicative anymore, you know, and it's not even domestic, it's global. And not only is that just that there's a biracial segment now, but that people are, especially the younger generation, is looking for markers of oh, this is a brand that will address not just my culture, but that is a more savvy brand. but then you need sort of a generalist, we have all the different markers in one place, but then how do you balance that with the culturally relevant content in a culturally relevant channel, and sort of saying, well, how do I manage this gap?
So, you know, working for CNN, look, we're a worldwide news provider, right? So we're providing news to everyone. But we decided to create content that speaks specifically to Latinos through Latino in America, Blacks through Black in America. We had Gary and Tony have a baby last year, but we tried to get smart. So this year what we're doing with Black in America is focused on technology, because guess what? There are African Americans that exist that like technology. So now we're focusing this conversation on that group. So we're digging down a level, right? It's housed in Silicon Valley. We're going in a house, kind of looks like the real world. Everybody watch in November. And then Latino in America is about this boxer, because not soccer, you like that? So it's about this boxer, and guess what she's doing? She's trying to make an Olympic bid. And so we wanted to, in the American unit, tell stories that were reflective of families. Now we do that within the CNN family, so guess what? You're still gonna have to buy Anderson Cooper. 40% of his audience is African American. They care about world issues. We're gonna drill down and let your advertiser attach to Black in America, to African Americans who like technology. We can have a comprehensive conversation and allow you to do all those things. You can't do everything to everybody. You still want to be able to talk to somebody. Look, I'm biracial, but I'm an African American woman. It's no disrespect to my mother. It's just how I live. It's how I buy stuff. It's the food I like, the clothes I like. So it's how I live my life. And I want to be spoken to like that. I mean, there's a lot of complexities, but you still have to give somebody something attached to, and conversations that are going to allow advertisers to attach themselves to, right? You have to. And so then the messaging within that also needs to be the same conversation somewhat. Now it could be a multi-generational, multi-whatever targeting within that conversation, but you still have to be somewhat respectful of the conversation that content providers are putting in front of you. If that made any sense at all. Love the pants, by the way.
It's interesting looking at content providers, you know, that conversation, how comfortable it is. And you can see if you look at network TV, and you look at cable TV. And the network TV you see in younger people still having an all-white life experience, which is amazing to me. And you will see all across the original program on the cable television where the groups are multicultural in the nature of the groups. But you also see in mainstream news the content is just kind of out there and not always targeted in a way that's relevant to people. You see the cable news will have content within its own program that's targeted to different groups as well as inclusive. So it's a conversation of the content as well.
My question is from a corporate perspective. As a former multicultural marketing person, the challenge that was given to me every time was, what is the scale? And my multicultural agencies or publications, media, they could not articulate that. So my challenge is, I don't know where it is. This is 4 years ago for me, but I'd like to know, one, when I had to go to Comcast, and I spent my money on Comcast, they were able to say, well, we could capture the African American, and by the way, we also capture Hispanic. But when I would go to my ethnic publications, they could not break out that scale. So has that changed since then?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say that there were certain African American media companies 4 years ago that could address that, and there were others that could not. And the ones that could address that oftentimes were measured and had paid to be audited and done and signed up for MRI and had done the things where you could actually measure that, you know. And then, but again, the flip side of that is that oftentimes those syndicated tools, when you go to African American or gay or Latino or Hispanic, what's the word? The numbers weren't big enough for them supposedly because they couldn't find enough of us to research to give you the correct data. So the data was unstable. That's what they would say. And so then when you're talking to a paint company about the idea of them advertising with you, you know, for paint, they would say, well, we go to the statistics and you know, you guys don't index well in paint. Home. You're painting for your home. Yet, you know, there's numbers that show that, hey, well, the growth of the African American market in home buying is, you know, over-indexing, and they can't connect the dots because the numbers in the research for paint don't add up. So, have the numbers gotten better? I believe so. I think, TV One, BET, Essence, they all have great data and research. I think Vibe, we have access to a lot of data and research. I know that most of the companies, Nielsen has a lot of information now. But the reality is here's the last thing. Agencies and clients are quick to rely on research and data to keep you out. And they don't do that, oftentimes. And they make decisions to buy this new magazine that's not measured, or this new brand that's not measured. And so it just has to be a little more balanced.
So to that point, what would have helped me as an farm executive is if, just like how you sitting up there, if you all came together as a unit and share the power, because the more powerful you are as a group, the more you make it easier for the corporate person internally to build a business rationale and how this can impact the business.
And I'm sorry, it sounds good, and I think we are, as we see, I'll say we see a lot of our friends here that we are competitors, but we're friends. We've been doing it for 20 years. But the reality is, unfortunately, for right or wrong differences, so back in the day when there was Mr. Johnson, Mr. Graves, Mr. Lewis, and and Clarence over at Essence, they had no choice but to band, and so they did that. And so from the successes of what they've paved the way for us, we have many different brands out there. Some that are measured and new. You have Jones Magazine. You have Munson's publications that are out there. And look, the reality is there's a lot of things to buy. And what it is now is the agencies and clients, you have to work. You have to study. If you want to reach this audience that they've shown you all the numbers from before, you have to work, and we'll work with you, but you have to do the work, and it's not as easy as painting the box like you used to do before.
But in building a new general cultural alliance, the strength that I saw that made me successful in my brands is I fed the community. And feeding the community is not just putting all my money in Vibe or putting all my money in Univision, but I made sure even my smaller publications and social digital resources, niche, Hear Media, all of them, I made sure everybody was fed. So that's where I'm just trying to make sure that that conversation and dialogue is exchanging, because that's, in a multicultural, you feed a community, you don't feed just power entities.
Yes, scale has been a big problem in addressing the gay market, because there wasn't an easy way to reach them en masse. And part of what our company does is aggregates. We have about 400 publishers that we represent. So through a single conduit, you can reach out to many of the smaller online publications that were inaccessible before this aggregation took place. So yeah, it's been a hindrance to growth in the gay market for a long time.
Yeah, a question for Michelle and for Mark. Michelle, I wonder if you could give us a sense of the kind of conversations going on in CNN about the contributors and the hosts of shows, because all this information impacts that as well. So while Anderson Cooper's audience might be 40% black, the contributors and the folk who appear there are not 40% black. So I wonder, are these kind of conversations going on in terms of not just the content, but the actual hosts and the contributors at CNN? And for Mark, I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about the interface between race and ethnicity and the LGBT community, because we haven't had a chance to hear you speak on that a little bit.
So, since y'all family, right? Yeah. Okay. Look, we can all do better, right? You can turn on any channel and not see what the face of America looks like. Now, I will say the reason that I work for CNN and stay there is because what you guys don't see is the real commitment that they make. Now, you may not see it in prime time, and we don't know what's going to happen over the next 12, 24 months, but I will say that CNN allows me to have a multicultural business and have this conversation. My staff looks like me. Matter of fact, they're a little browner, thank goodness. And then if you put all of our journalists up, which some blogger did, because he said, how come none of these people are in prime time? You see that we've made a commitment to multiculturalism. We have a diversity council. We are philanthropic. We make sure that we partner with different folks. We do so much that nobody's going to talk about. So I'm not going to sit here and defend, but let me just say that I sit here because we're committed. And the day that we're not, then I won't be sitting on this panel representing CNN.
And to answer your other question, the gay market, we kind of, a lot of the research that's out there kind of paints it as, a very affluent white male audience, which is not the case. It's as diverse as the general market. It has, everyone's represented there. And so The challenge is if you're trying to reach a segment of the market, you're trying to reach the Hispanic gay market or the African American lesbian market, through digital means, through targeting to different websites or through different mobile apps, you can get that type of micro-targeting within the market. And so as you look at the general market, you shouldn't be looking at the gay market as kind of just one culture. It's really diverse. So ways that we're able to achieve that for advertisers, we do a lot of geo-targeting of campaigns that are targeted to segments. So as we saw earlier, where Hispanic market is heavily concentrated, African American market, we see advertisers running campaigns targeting African American gay men by focusing on certain cities where we know the concentration's highest. And creative matches it, the messaging, where users go once they kind of engage with the ad, all that becomes focused on that segment of the gay market. And it's growing.
Yeah, and I'm not going to delve too much into the technology and social media because I think there's a panel on that that's going to devote that to that. So because we could really go into that for quite a while.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm a little cold, so my voice is shaky. One thing I wanted to talk about, especially with content providers, which I know Michelle and you, Sarah, in terms of content that might not have a black or brown or gay face on it, but marketing to these communities by different pieces that might be relevant to the communities, how do you all have those conversations with potential advertisers and the such? Because what I hear a lot of times is that there's not a black face in there, it's not relevant to the black audience. Whereas I'm thinking, black audiences have been watching TV for a long time before we had black people on TV. So how are you having those conversations specifically with the black, Latino, and gay audience, the advertisers?
I don't think we can't say that anything is not relevant. I'm saying that you can make things more relevant. Look, we're going to all watch American Idol. We're going to all watch Desperate Housewives. I've been watching Single Ladies a little bit. Shh, don't tell anybody. But what I'm saying is that when you immerse your brand in something, make it relevant, right? So, or more relevant. You should have your brand here, but you should also have it here. That's all that this is about. It's not one or the other. It's both. It's cross-cultural.
Like what I'm saying specifically, I'm sorry, just to clarify. I want to see advertising for all shows or all pieces of content in a vibe, in the gay media.
Oh, right.
Or things like that. I don't want to hear when I'm in my meetings, there's no relevance there. Because content is relevant to people who love content. And we just have to find the relevant hook, to your point, and make sure that we enhance the relevance and make sure that people are actually connecting with what we're putting out there. Not just saying because it's not visible to the naked eye, it's not a stereotypical relevance, that there's no relevance at all.
I mean, I think the biggest example of that is the movie business. And I know there was a great study that just was released. African Americans see more movies than any other race. There was some big research study. And so why wouldn't a movie company put their advertising in vibe, and why wouldn't it be in black and it should, and that is the purpose of this conversation. I don't think there are any movie studios here. Maybe you guys need to go get some movie studio clients. But they have to understand that there's a power in, and the mindset is like, look, they're going to come anyway. Are they? Maybe, maybe not.
Actually, the same applies to Hispanics. I mean, the movie studios are a very large client of ours and growing. We actually recently created a special group for the entertainment industry because we see more and more potential. But we are driving a more than fair share of moviegoers every weekend.
Right. Yeah. And I think what we learned, it was an interesting study we looked at in terms of the movies, which was interesting, was movies that had some mysticism or that kind of thing in that would attract Asian Americans more than we even thought about. We just didn't connect it until it. So, and the other thing, for example, a study one of my colleagues did at Time says that it's interesting of how Asian Americans were using Time magazine, not, these are recent immigrants rather, were using it as a way to help their children learn more about this country in a quick way, people that wanted to get their kids enrolled and their English up. So I think part of what you need to look at is that many of the media, the mainstream media, I worked with a lot of our media across Time Warner divisions, have a story, but they don't normally tell a general market that story. They tend to not. not talk about, ask them. And then you might find out something very interesting, like we have found out in terms of different brands as we ask them. We are now at 0. We are getting ready to end this, but I wanted to ask each person for one takeaway that you would like this audience to remember.
It's not so much a takeaway because we've talked about a lot, but I just want to leave with you guys that we all are in this room and we all have an opportunity to have our own unique legacy. And our legacy potentially could be around this cross-cultural conversation. It's a big conversation. We can all have ownership of some piece of it. This is our opportunity to be different, to think different, to do something different, to leave something for other people to say, wow, they really changed, created a movement. And I just want to leave with all of you that this is destiny, y'all. We were supposed to be here and have this conversation. So let's not leave this room and not do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's the demographics are our destiny, and we saw the numbers this morning. And the thought I want to leave you is this is a new American reality, and when you start your marketing plan, business plans, when you're looking at one of your clients, you should be thinking about, what am I doing? What am I doing about Hispanic? What am I doing about African American? What am I doing about the gay, lesbian community? It's a must. It's not something. He said it at the beginning. I go back. It's culture should be embedded up front. I mean, I think it was such a visionary, Miles, to start the conference with that. And that's where we should start.
Yep. I think it was a great discussion. I think again, thanks to Ogilvy, and I think the goal should be is oftentimes, and again, many of us in this room have been doing this for 20 some odd years, having this conversation, and there will be panels, there will be discussions, there will be conferences about it, and the reality is we're back at square one every year. And so what I hope is that, again, for the folks who have been doing it for the last 20 years or so, let's keep the fight up, keep pushing. And then the folks that are part of the agencies and clientele, the clients in the room, is hey, the time is now, and let's not put this to the side for next year, or put this to the side 5 years from now. You've got to grow your business, and the way to grow your business is by participating in this cross-culture movement. And there are a lot of brands and products and services that can help you get there.
Yeah, and I think to reiterate what everybody's saying, I think the main takeaway is that you shouldn't be looking at these segments as ancillary markets, but they're becoming the core part of your marketing opportunity going forward. So thinking about them up front, putting your plans together up front so that they're working together to leverage each other. I think that's where the power really is. So your mainstream message is reinforced within each of the categories when your campaigns are running in selective media. And that's where you're going to see the best return.
And I just would like to say, if you are missing the mark on the cross-culturalism, you're probably missing the mark on your general mainstream, especially when you're talking to a younger market. All right, I'd like to thank our panelists, and I'd like to give them a big round of applause. And thank you for your questions.